Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex ideas and try to pull out the most valuable insights from the sources you've shared with us.
Great to be diving in.
So today we're tackling something you hear constantly, this pervasive metaphor. Is business war?
Ah, yes,
Mhm.
the battlefield of the boardroom.
Exactly. You hear it everywhere, don't you? We're always targeting customers or launching campaigns fighting for market share.
hmm
It's almost like automatic, just part of the language we use without thinking.
It really is. These military analogies, they're just so deeply ingrained in how we talk about commerce, how we think about it.
But here's the question we want to dig into. Are they actually helpful? Are they inspiring? Or are they maybe a bit toxic, even misleading?
Right. Especially now, in a modern economy that seems to rely so much more on collaboration, on customer service, creating these positive sum partnerships where everybody can win.
That's the core of it. So today, that's our deep dive. We're going to dissect this whole idea.
And we've got some great sources to help us do that. Classic stuff like Sun Tzu's The Art of War,
Right, the foundational text for so much strategic thinking.
but also blending that with modern business insights. We want to really explore if this combative mindset, this adversarial framing, truly helps businesses thrive.
Does thinking in terms of conflict, enemies, and just winning actually serve us? Or does it maybe blind us to, I don't know, better ways, more collaborative paths to growth and innovation?
That's the mission today. We'll try to uncover where these metaphors even came from, look at their real-world impact, the good and the bad.
And then hopefully explore some alternative ways to think about business, maybe ways that lead to more sustainable, more innovative results.
Yeah, get ready for hopefully some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments. We really want you to come away well-informed on this whole debate. It's actually quite critical, even if it seems like just words.
The enduring allure of military metaphors in business.
Okay, let's unpack this first part. We have to start just by acknowledging how much this military language is used in business. It's everywhere.
It really is. Strategic objectives,
Market campaigns.
defense tactics, command and control.
It feels so natural, almost like it's just inherent to competition itself.
Yeah.
Like, how else would you even talk about trying to succeed against rivals?
Well, it feels natural for some pretty good reasons, actually. There are deep historical roots here that tap into something fundamental about challenge and struggle.
Okay, tell me more about that.
If you look at Sun Tzu's The Art of War, probably the most famous example it came out of the warring states period in ancient China.
Right, an incredibly violent time.
Exactly, just intense warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed. And in periods like that, sheer necessity forces people to find new answers, to innovate under pressure.
So crisis breeds ingenuity.
In a way, yes. That era, despite all the strife, saw remarkable technological and cultural leaps forward. So this core idea of applying intense, focused, almost existential thinking to overcome huge challenges, often against a clear adversary, well, that's powerful stuff.
I can see that. When the stakes are that high, you learn fast or you disappear.
Precisely. The book itself came out of this crucible. Societies were mustering enormous resources, intellectual and material, just to survive. It suggests that these high-stakes competitive environments can absolutely foster breakthroughs. It's about bringing everything you have to bear on the problem.
Okay, so that explains some of the appeal. What specific lessons, then, from the art of war do business leaders grab onto? What's the wisdom they're trying to import into the corporate world?
Well, the big one, the most famous one, is probably know your enemy and yourself.
The classic.
Right. Sun Tzu says, if you master this, through 100 battles, you will never be in danger. Know yourself, but not the enemy. You win some, you lose some.
And if you know neither?
You're always in danger. That's the warning.
And how does that play out in business? It sounds like basic market research, right?
It translates directly to that, yes, but maybe with more intensity. Relentless market research, sophisticated competitive intelligence, and maybe most importantly, a really rigorous, honest self-assessment of your own capabilities, your strengths, your weaknesses.
Okay.
Think about Michael Porter's work on competitive strategy. It's all about analyzing industries and competitors, understanding these strategic groups, knowing your structural position.
Strategic groups. Explain that a bit more.
Porter saw them as this useful middle ground, an analytical device between looking at the whole industry and looking at every single firm. It's about identifying clusters of firms that follow similar strategies.
Like premium brands versus budget brands.
Exactly, or firms focused on innovation versus those focused on operational efficiency. Porter stressed that these differences in strategy really matter if they significantly affect the structural position of the firms. Knowing who's playing the same game as you by roughly the same rules is crucial.
So it's not just knowing who your competitors are, but how they compete and how that compares to your own approach.
Precisely. It's about achieving unparalleled clarity, a ruthless self-assessment. What are we really good at? Where are we vulnerable? And pairing that with an almost forensic understanding of your rivals. What are their playbooks? What's their strategic position?
So the takeaway isn't just do research, it's achieve profound strategic self-awareness in relation to your specific rivals.
You've got it. Sun Tzu wasn't just saying gather data. He was saying internalize it, understand the battlefield intuitively. Porter gives us a framework. Figure out your strategic group, understand your position within it, and then you have real strategic leverage. You can anticipate moves, not just react.
That feels like a much more powerful framing.
Okay.
What other military concepts get pulled into business thinking beyond just knowing the opponent?
Another key one from Sun Tzu is this idea of making yourself invincible first and then waiting for the enemy to become vulnerable.
Invincible first.
Yeah.
How does that work?
He says being invincible lies within one's own power to achieve. It's about your own house, your own preparations. But making the enemy vulnerable, that's something the enemy determines. You can't force them to make mistakes.
Oh, okay. So focus on your own strength and readiness.
Exactly. Good warriors, he says, are able to make themselves invincible, but are not able to make the enemy vulnerable. You control your preparedness, not their errors.
That sounds very relevant today. How does it connect to modern business strategy?
You see a clear echo in Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers framework. Helmer argues very strongly that a business must achieve power or else face ruin.
Power in what sense? Market dominance.
Not necessarily brute force. He means building an attractive strategic position through specific durable advantages. Things like network effects, scale economies, a strong brand, counter-positioning, things that are hard for competitors to replicate.
Okay, sustainable advantages.
Right. He explicitly says operational excellence, just being good at what you do day to day, is not enough. You have to attain power in his specific sense to truly insulate yourself and thrive long term. It's about building that invincible position Sun Tzu talked about.
Building a defensible fortress, essentially, not just having sharper swords today. Makes sense. What about intelligence? Spying. That's huge in warfare.
Absolutely foundational. And Sun Tzu goes into surprising detail, talking about using 5 types of spies. Local, inside, double, dead, live.
Wow, okay. Maybe not directly applicable to HR policies today.
Probably not the dead spies, no. But the underlying principle, knowing things beforehand, creating what he calls a divine net of knowledge. That's a ruler's treasure.
So how does that translate ethically to business?
It's about comprehensive market intelligence. Understanding customer needs deeply, anticipating technological shifts before they happen, monitoring the regulatory landscape, even understanding your own internal organizational dynamics.
So using data, analytics, foresight.
Exactly. Leveraging all available information ethically to gain an informational edge. The goal is proactive strategy shaping, not reactive scrambling.
It's interesting how this mindset isn't just theory. You can see it in how some leaders act. Robert Moses, the New York planner, comes to mind. He seemed to operate like a general conducting a campaign.
Oh, absolutely. Moses is a fascinating and controversial example of this commander-like approach. He was a master of political power, of pushing his agenda relentlessly.
How did he manage that?
Well, Robert Cara's biography paints a picture of someone who understood leverage. He apparently deceived the board constantly. He'd assure them a huge project wouldn't cost the city a penny get it started.
And then?
Then, when it was too late politically to stop, he'd demand huge sums of money knowing they were trapped. Cara says he wasn't interested in favor, but in accomplishment and power.
So alliances, deals.
Constantly, swapping land, casually as if they were playing Monopoly. He saw the whole system as a landscape to be manipulated to achieve his vision.
Any specific examples of that kind of maneuver?
Caro details how he got land for Fordham University basically as a gift, using his power as Slum Clearance Committee chairman. Fordham was so grateful they named Robert Moses Plaza after him. It shows this incredible single-mindedness, where the ends his perceived accomplishment justified almost any means. It's a very battle-like approach to civic projects.
The dark side of the battlefield, when military metaphors become toxic.
Okay, so we see the appeal, the focus, the drive it can provide. Like Moses, it can achieve things. But is treating business as war always the best approach? what are the downsides, the toxic side effects of this mindset? Because, war implies casualties.
That's exactly the right question, and it really gets to the heart of the critique.
Mhm.
A huge problem is the inherent zero-sum game perspective that warfare encourages.
Zero sum, meaning for me to win, you have to lose.
Precisely. Like a fixed pie. If one company grabs a bigger slice, another slice automatically shrinks. The pie itself doesn't grow. W. Chan Kim and Renee Mauborgne, the Blue Ocean Strategy authors, point out this is how conventional strategy often works. It tees off with industry analysis, and strategy becomes this zero-sum fight where one company's gain is another company's loss.
And the problem with that is,
If you're always focused on defeating an enemy, you can completely miss opportunities for mutual benefit, for collaboration, for expanding the whole market so everyone gets a bigger slice.
right, and it must affect the internal culture too.
Absolutely. It can create a really negative internal vibe. Employees become troops, maybe expendable. Information gets hoarded like military secrets instead of shared openly. It undermines the very teamwork you need to tackle complex problems.
Yeah, I can see that. It also feels like a war mentality might push companies towards really aggressive, maybe short-term tactics, sometimes crossing ethical lines, maybe.
That's a definite risk. The focus shifts from long-term value creation to just winning the immediate battle, whatever the cost. Look at speculators in financial markets. John Brooks described how they mounted assaults on the British pound back in the 60s, treating the currency like an enemy fortification to be breached.
Just pure attack.
Or think about the dot-com bubble. Burton Malkiel observed that supposedly sophisticated hedge funds didn't act as a correcting force against insane overpricing. Instead, they helped inflate the bubble by riding it rather than attacking it
Why would they do that?
because they saw a short-term win. They figured contagious enthusiasm and herding by less savvy investors would keep pushing prices up, so they jumped in to profit from the battle itself rather than looking at fundamental value or market stability.
Exploiting the frenzy.
Exactly. And sometimes that aggressive, exploitative approach blows up spectacularly. Remember Howie Hubler at Morgan Stanley?
Fair Bagley. The name rings a bell.
Michael Lewis wrote about him. Hubler made what he thought was a simple bet against the housing market, got tangled in complex derivatives, and ended up losing $9 billion. $9 billion.
Wow. The single biggest trading loss ever.
At the time, yes. He and his team thought they were the smart guys, put here to exploit the market's stupid inefficiencies. But that mindset, treating the market as an adversary to be outsmarted, led to absolute catastrophe. Not just for them, but it contributed to the wider financial crisis.
That is sobering. And it highlights how this attack mentality can really warp judgment. It can even turn customers into targets, right? Not just competitors.
Sadly, yes. That's a really sharp point. Brad Stone's book on Amazon, The Everything Store, has this chilling description of third-party sellers. He calls their reliance on Amazon like a heroin addiction.
How so?
They get this initial euphoric rush from all the sales volume on the platform. But then, Stone writes, comes the self-destruction when Amazon starts gutting the sellers' margins and undercutting them on price, often using data from the sellers to launch its own competing products.
Ouch. So Amazon uses its power against its own partners.
The description is harsh. Sellers push and bitch and complain and threaten until they finally see they have to cut themselves off. When you apply that war metaphor to customers or even partners, it can depersonalize them, justify aggressive actions that cause real harm, and just erode trust completely, becomes adversarial.
Okay, so it harms external relationships. What about inside the company? If the CEO is the general and employees are soldiers, what does that do to morale, innovation?
It can be incredibly damaging. Think about Carol Dweck's work on mindsets applied to companies. In what she'd call a fixed mindset company, employees often feel only a few star performers were highly valued. The company isn't really invested in everyone else's development.
Yeah, and the result?
Those employees were more likely to admit to keeping secrets, cutting corners, and cheating to get ahead. It creates this toxic, fear-based environment. It stifles creativity, kills initiative, prevents real collaboration. Trust evaporates.
Not exactly a recipe for success.
Not at all. And what's really fascinating is that even the military itself is moving away from these rigid structures.
Really? The originators of the metaphor.
Yeah. Jocko Willink, in Extreme Ownership, talks about command and control, obviously, but notes that in modern warfare, strict silos were no longer an accurate reflection of the environment. They had to adapt.
Interesting.
And General Stanley McChrystal, who led Special Operations Forces, explicitly said their rigid top-to-bottom structure was a product of military history and military culture. He saw the challenge was breaching the vertical walls between divisions to become more agile and interconnected.
So even the military finds the old command structures too slow, too rigid for today's world.
Exactly. It strongly suggests that blindly applying those old war structures and metaphors to business might actually be counterproductive, even by military standards.
Forging new paths, collaboration, innovation, and value creation.
Okay, so if business's war is often flawed, creating zero-sum games, toxic cultures, maybe even unethical behavior, what's the alternative? What's a more constructive way to think about strategy, about growth? How do companies get beyond just trying to win or defeat someone?
This is where things get really exciting, I think, because many of the most successful strategies we see aren't about fighting over the existing pie at all. They're about creating new markets, finding new value.
Expanding the pie itself.
Exactly.
Oh,
This is the core idea behind Blue Ocean Strategy. Kim and Malborn basically say, stop looking to the competition, value innovate, and let the competition worry about you.
value innovate.
Create a leap in value for buyers while simultaneously reducing your costs. It's not about benchmarking against rivals, it's about redefining the terms of competition altogether. They argue that industry structure isn't fixed, it can be shaped.
So breaking out of the bloody red ocean of competition.
And into the clear blue ocean of uncontested market space. It shifts the whole mindset from zero-sum fighting to positive-sum creation, creating new value that benefits customers, the company, maybe even the whole ecosystem.
That sounds way more appealing. Can you give us some examples, businesses that really embody this blue ocean thinking?
Amazon is actually a great example, despite the earlier point about sellers. Bezos' original vision for an everything store wasn't just about beating bookstores. It was leveraging unlimited digital shelf space to create something entirely new
Right, moving into electronics, clothes, everything.
and constantly expanding into new verticals. But the ultimate blue ocean move was probably Amazon Web Services, AWS.
Turning their internal infrastructure into a massive new business.
Exactly. They created an entirely new market category, cloud computing services for businesses, making their overall market exponentially bigger, not just stealing share from existing IT providers. That wasn't fighting a direct competitor, it was defining a whole new space.
And you mentioned their financial structure helped.
Yes, that negative operating cycle, getting cash from customers before paying suppliers, gave them this incredible steady stream of capital. It wasn't just a weapon against rivals, it was the fuel that allowed them to explore and fund these massive blue ocean expansions without constantly needing outside investment. The mechanism enabled the creation.
That distinction makes sense. The tool enabled expansion, not just attack. Okay, what about companies built more explicitly on connection, on enabling others? How does that fit?
LinkedIn is a perfect case study there. It's built entirely on network effects and virality.
Meaning, the more people use it, the more valuable it becomes for everyone.
Precisely. The founders understood this intuitively. They aggressively and competently pushed tactics, knowing that users' value of the service depended on the presence of others. They needed that critical mass.
Okay, got it.
A key move was enabling users to easily upload their entire address books, which rapidly grew the network and its value proposition. More connections, more jobs, more recruiters, the value snowballed.
And they didn't necessarily have to defeat Facebook, right?
Right. The fact that both Facebook and LinkedIn thrived as somewhat walled-off networks showed that separation, catering to different needs, personal versus professional, allowed for coexistence. It wasn't a zero-sum battle for all social networking time.
And you mentioned something about launching early.
Yes, drawing from lean startup ideas, the point of launching your product early is to learn as quickly as possible, even if you're initially embarrassed by it. This iterative learning, adapting based on user feedback, is so different from executing a rigid secret battle plan. It's about co-creating with the market.
Adaptability again. Listening, not just dictating. It feels much healthier.
Absolutely. And think about Adobe Acrobat. You mentioned that earlier.
Right, the PDF format. It wasn't an overnight success.
No, initially it flopped. Sales were tiny. But then the rise of the internet created an unexpected opportunity. HTML couldn't reliably preserve the exact look and feel of complex documents across different computers.
Ah, so PDF filled a gap that technology created.
Exactly. Its value emerged from fulfilling the specific unmet need. It wasn't about conquering an existing market or fighting a direct competitor. It was adapting, finding a unique niche that the evolving digital landscape required.
And it became huge.
Went from barely $2 million in sales to nearly $1 billion business over 10 years. It's a testament to market listening, flexibility, and pivoting to create value where a new need emerges, not forcing a predetermined battle plan.
That's powerful. And what about collaboration between companies, even potential rivals? That seems like the ultimate anti-war approach.
It really does, and it happens more than you might think. Think about R&D consortia.
Companies pooling research efforts.
Yes, they form specifically to get access to the partner's competences, to create new competences together that none could manage alone, and then to exploit the results collectively. Firms literally ally to conduct research, learn together, develop new products. It's pure cooperation for mutual benefit.
The exact opposite of battle.
Completely. Or look at financial services now. You see this trend towards specialization. Companies become either narrow service providers or big integrated players. This opens the door for platform businesses and specialized B2B providers offering things like banking as a service.
So it's becoming more like an ecosystem.
Precisely, an ecosystem of specialized interconnected services that cooperate and integrate. Value comes from interoperability and partnership, not from isolated, all-out warfare between monolithic banks.
It really feels like understanding customer needs deeply, fostering internal cultures that support growth and learning. That these are far more impactful drivers than just adopting a war mentality.
I think the evidence points strongly in that direction. Eric Ries, in The Lean Startup, shows how crucial customer interaction is. Once they got real data, they started asking urgent questions like, why aren't customers responding to our product improvements?
So listening to behavior, not just assuming.
Right. And that customer-centric learning led to vital pivots, aligning what they built with what customers really wanted. The goal shifted from winning against customers by selling them stuff to serving them by creating genuine value, often through quick experiments and feedback loops.
That's a fundamental shift.
And culturally, the contrast is stark. Research shows that in growth mindset cultures, where learning and development are valued, employees are significantly more likely to trust colleagues, believe the company fosters innovation, and feel supported in taking risks nearly 50% more likely on trust and innovation, 65% on risk-taking.
Wow.
That kind of environment breeds creativity, loyalty, real problem solving. It's the polar opposite of a fear-based war culture where everyone's watching their back.
Leadership beyond the commander. Cultivating new mindsets.
Okay, so if we want to move away from this potentially limiting business is war idea, it clearly requires a different kind of leadership, not just the lone general on the hill. What does that look like? How do leaders actually cultivate this different, more collaborative, more creative mindset in their teams?
That's a critical piece. Effective leaders today can't just rely on one style, especially not just the commander mode.
Yeah.
Daniel Goleman's research on leadership styles is really insightful here.
What did he find?
He found that the best leaders are proficient in multiple styles, particularly authoritative, democratic, affiliative, and coaching styles. They have a repertoire, and crucially, they can switch flexibly among the leadership styles as the situation requires.
So adaptability in leadership style itself.
Exactly. It's far from that rigid top-down military command structure. And Goleman argues that the foundation for this flexibility, the absolute essential quality, the sine qua non of leadership, he calls it, is emotional intelligence.
EQ over IQ, almost.
The top leadership roles, he argues, yes. Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skill. These allow leaders to understand the context, read people, and choose the right approach. Without EQ, even brilliant people struggle to truly lead effectively. So connection, motivation, nuance, not just directives.
So it's much more about empowering people, right? Fostering open communication, creating safety rather than just barking orders.
Precisely. Think about Kim Scott's radical candor. Her whole framework is built on two axes: care personally and challenge directly.
Care personally, challenge directly. How does that work?
It means building genuine relationships where people feel safe enough that you can challenge them directly and they can challenge you back. Creating an environment where people feel comfortable saying, criticize me, where you can debate openly. This is how learning and improvement happen.
And the opposite is?
Things like manipulative insincerity, fake caring, or obnoxious aggression, challenging without caring. Both are toxic to trust and performance.
That makes sense. And building on that trust.
Patrick Lencioni, in The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, argues that true teamwork absolutely requires vulnerability. Team members have to make themselves vulnerable to one another and be confident that their respective vulnerabilities will not be used against them.
That feels like the polar opposite of a battlefield.
It is. When you have that psychological safety, teams can focus their energy and attention completely on the job hand, rather than on being strategically disingenuous or political. It unlocks collective potential, whereas a culture of internal battle just drains energy into self-preservation.
And the leader's own focus, their own sense of purpose, must play a huge role in setting that non-combative tone. It starts at the top, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just how they manage others, it's how they manage themselves. Stephen Covey makes this point beautifully in The Seven Habits. He says, management follows leadership.
What does he mean by that?
Effective leaders, Covey argues, prioritize based on importance, not just urgency. They focus on quadrant 2 activities, the important but not urgent stuff like planning, relationship building, prevention, capability development, not just constantly fighting fires or reacting to the loudest battle.
About being proactive, not reactive.
Right. And their priorities need to be authentic, deeply planted in their hearts and minds, guided by core principles. This allows them to make conscious choices, to say a bigger yes to what truly matters, rather than being pulled around by external pressures or the perceived need to constantly fight.
It takes real self-awareness.
It does. And you see glimpses of this even in figures you might not expect. John D. Rockefeller, often painted as the ultimate ruthless capitalist.
Right, the definition of a robber baron to some.
Yet he also operated with this strong doctrine of stewardship. He apparently believed wealth was a sign of God's grace and felt obligated to get money, get it honestly, and then give it wisely.
So a sense of purpose beyond just accumulation.
Seemingly so. Records show he took palpable pleasure in distributing money for charitable purposes, even from a young age. It suggests a more complex motivation than pure conquest. He even became quite adept at PR, charming reporters, getting elected an honorary member of the American Press Humorists. It shows a more nuanced approach to influence than just crushing opponents.
That's fascinating. It suggests the real goal, perhaps, should be creating value, contributing something, not just winning or accumulating wealth for its own sake.
I think that's a powerful takeaway.
Hmm.
Even Milton Friedman, a huge advocate for free markets, saw their potential beyond just competition. He noted the advantages of individualism, decentralization, self-interest could be purged of its defects and its abuses,
Leading to what?
leading to a wider scope for personal choice, for variety of life, fostering experiment to better the future. It's a vision of a competitive system that's ultimately productive and generative, not purely destructive.
A competition that drives progress, not just conflict.
Exactly. And looking forward, Satya Nadella from Microsoft talks about the enduring value of uniquely human traits, real intelligence, real empathy, and real common sense. As AI gets more powerful, he argues these human qualities become scarcer and more valuable.
So the future isn't just about technological might.
Perhaps not. It suggests that human-centric values, collaboration, empathy, creative problem-solving, these might be the key differentiators for growth and success, much more so than a purely combative might makes right approach. Leadership might be increasingly about nurturing those human qualities. Outro.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground there. We've navigated through the landscape of military metaphors in business, starting with the strategic wisdom of Sun Tzu, looking at the, well, almost warlike effectiveness of someone like Robert Moses, but then contrasting that with the collaborative ecosystems we see in tech, the blue ocean strategies, the focus on connection and creation.
Yeah, and it seems pretty clear, doesn't it? While that war mentality might offer a simple, compelling story, maybe a jolt of urgency.
It often limits our thinking. It can distort priorities, foster negative cultures, and maybe even be actively counterproductive in the kind of interconnected world we live in now.
Exactly. We've seen how focusing differently on creating power through innovation, on really understanding and serving customers, on building genuine collaboration, and on leading with adaptability and emotional intelligence can lead to much more robust, more sustainable, more innovative results than just fighting for market share.
The biggest successes often seem to come not from winning battles in the old territory, but from creating entirely new landscapes.
Building new value, fostering growth for potentially everyone involved, often through cooperation, not just conflict. The sources really seem to point towards connection and creation as the more powerful paths.
So as you, listening, think about the challenges and strategies in your own work. Maybe you're leading a team, launching something new, figuring out your market position. Here's a final thought to chew on.
What if the biggest strategic advantage isn't found in figuring out how to defeat an enemy?
What if it's found in building a world or even just a market niche where new value can flourish for everyone involved? How might that shift from battlefield to ecosystem, from conflict to creation? How might that change your next big decision? Might it point you towards that open blue ocean instead of the crowded, exhausting red one?
That is definitely a question worth pondering long after this deep dive wraps up. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.